Hi, my name is Jennifer Daly, and I work at Legal Services for Children in San Francisco, California. I'm an attorney who represents youth in the foster care system. Each kid in California who comes into the foster care system automatically gets signed an attorney, and our role is to look out for the best interest for the child, and as they get older and can self-advocate, we advocate for their stated interest. I was brought in today to talk a little bit about uh, a reform that happened in 2015 to overhaul California's foster care system. Um, I have a PowerPoint which will be provided to you. However, I'm not going to be following that directly. And I hope that you ask any questions that you have at the end of the presentation when we convene again. So I'm here to talk about continuing care reform. So in 2015, California decided to revamp the system to focus much more on placing children with family and strengthening family connections. I just want to say briefly before I get into everything, San Francisco County and California, I think in general, is very good about uh, working with families without removing children. I think that they have strong plans to reunite families and to give parents services so they can get their children back if there are issues. So I think that that's a strength of the California specific system. Unfortunately, I can't talk too much about nationally because I am a direct service provider here in San Francisco, California. So my knowledge is a little bit limited in that way. However, I can talk to you about California and specifically about San Francisco. And I could say that again, San Francisco, even more than California, has a pretty strong reunification system and focus. So we CPS, I'll use Child Protective Services, which is our foster care system, and CPS for short. CPS tends to try to avoid at any cost removing children if they can support families and could support children in their home. And there's a robust system before the removal of children to provide these services. So now I'll kind of jump into if a child is removed from their parents, are how our system works, and specifically since 2015. So in 2015, they changed the laws on how people are approved to become foster parents. And within this law, there's a lot of aspects. The first thing I'm going to talk about is resource families, which is what we are now calling our foster parents. They're called resource families. And well, actually, let me take a step back. Let me just tell you the main key points of continuing care reform is that children are placed first and foremost in families and in communities where they have community connection. So it doesn't have to be a blood relative, but any person the child considers a community connection. And then the next principle of continuing care reform is that services should be provided on a continuum. So that means wherever the kid goes, they should still be provided services and there shouldn't be a break in that service. They also are shutting down what we traditionally call group homes in California. So any type of setting where children were, many children were staying under one roof, we call it congregate care. But it's more of, I think, what people think of as a group home. All the group homes have been shut down, and now there's just specific treatment programs for the highest need youth. So that's kind of the main principles of the reform that happened. Now I'm going to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of continuing care reform, and I'm going to start referring to this piece of legislation as CCR. And so the first thing I'll jump back to the resource family approval. So they've decided that there should be a more robust system of approving caretakers to take care of kids and a more streamlined process so children can be adopted quicker. and part of this is to support relatives and to make sure that they have the services they need to support youth, the financial resources. They in the past, foster homes that were not related got additional funding. Now the funding streams are the same, whether you're a relative or a non-relative foster parent. So they also are doing much more robust assessments of homes to see what services can support families. So that is kind of the portion of the change in what a foster parent looks like. There's a lot more resources and training that they're providing now, with the goal of hopefully keeping children in their communities. Another really big part of continuing care reform is this, what I mentioned. They are process of shutting down all group homes in California. And there's only going to be short-term residential treatment facilities. And these are only for youth that exhibit a clinical need to be placed in a non-family setting, which is really, really changing the whole infrastructure of foster care in California. There's bumps along the road because first you have to build the capacity in foster homes. So they're closing group homes, and it's been a little bit of a growing pains as of right now. But we're looking forward to a more robust foster care family setting and resources being put to that rather than put into group homes, so that more kids can be in more community settings. And there's also a lot of more regulations in these new residential programs. Children should not be there more than 6 months. There's a lot of reviews that have to happen when a child has to stay more than 6 months. There has to be psychiatrists and nursing staff on site. And there's just a lot of more mental health support. And there's a lot additional help to transition kids, what we call step them down to a family setting. Again, there's some positive and negatives of this right now. But I think that the idea of the law and is great. The struggle is when group homes close and we have no place for these youth to go. It's a bit of a challenge that we're facing. Another part of continuing care reform is the Quality Parenting Initiative, QPI, and this is a initiative for recruiting and retraining highly qualified caregivers who provide excellent care to children. And they basically want to take they want to rebrand what it means to be a foster parent. I don't know. Well, let me just for a second pause. It's very difficult for us in San Francisco because of the economics of the city. It's a very wealthy city now, and there's a lot of gentrification. A lot of sorry, I won't go into what gentrification is. I know that we might define that differently, but essentially we're losing a lot of people who are willing to be foster parents. So they're trying to create a whole new recruitment strategy. They also are in California, they're having some additional resources for foster parents. For example, they have what they're calling a professional foster parent, which is someone who actually gets a full-time salary in order to be a foster parent, which has helped with kind of our most vulnerable youth, the ones who take the most resources. Another aspect of continuing care reform, which is essential to this model that is more family friendly and focused on youth and their families and keeping children again within their communities, is what they call children and family team meetings. And these are regular meetings, which is comprised of youth and their families and like all ancillary individuals who are working with them. So anyone the children and family think can support them attend these meetings. And these meetings are to determine anything from visitation to where children are placed to what services are placed. And there's a heavy focus on uh, the family's voice and what they think the family needs, and youth voice especially. And uh, it really, I think, has this new community model of making decisions. I think is effective and helps families feel empowered, which I think is essential to getting buy-in and supporting families. These meetings convene automatically every 90 days, but if if an issue comes up there, they at times are convened more frequently. The other aspect of continuing care reform is access to mental health services, um, especially specialty services. So across the board, trying to meet child's mental health needs. Um, there also is services to help children transition to permanency. So we don't want kids languishing in the foster care system. We want to move them into permanent homes, with, first and foremost family, but if not, non-family permanent homes. There's also an educational and physical and behavioral supports, things like giving children access to physical activities or after school activities, and a recognition of how important that is. Uh, Finally, um, there's additional permanency services. So there's services to locate family, and to support family being part of a child's life, whether it's as a placement or just as a natural support for the child. So this is a really quick overview of CCR. What we're seeing now is the question is this working? I think it's going to take several years for the transition to happen and for everything to be in place and working well. But I think the idea of focusing on family is essential. So I've been in the working in this field for 20 years. I've represented children for 20 years. And we're finding that we're not raising kids very well in the foster care system. A lot of my youth come back and as parents and are in the system as parents again. There's a lot of with group home care, there's a lot of placement changes. Children are getting what they need, and it's very difficult, we've found, to raise kids in the traditional foster care system. So I think an acknowledgement of what we need is we need to support families and communities to take care of the children and their families in their community. So I think that CCR is a step in the right direction. So I briefly summarized CCR, but I do have a PowerPoint with a lot more details and with links to additional materials on each aspect of CCR. And I look forward to your questions. So thank you.